That's weird. I know, it is, feels weird. This feels like a dog. Yeah, yes.
Which clock do you go to?
Right? Oh, I always go with that clock. Thank you. Inspiration. Held fast. Okay, it is 4:30. So we will begin, and I will call our meeting to order for 4:30 on Tuesday the 28th of May, and recognize that we are conducting our business today in Tlaloquit territory. So I would like to have first please a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. And if someone would then please Lease, can we move the two motions together? Like, I mean, are we going to stand up on the stage and actually do the second motion? I didn't clarify that with you, sorry.
Sorry, what is the second?
The one where we resume?
We'll do that after when we're resuming the meeting.
When we resume, we'll pass the motion about resuming.
That's right.
Thank you. All right, so I'll move then that the May 28th, 2019 regular council meeting adjourned to the Clayoquot Sound Theatre at 380 Campbell Street to present a formal apology to Japanese Canadians and all others impacted by the 1947 Commissioner's Resolution.
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. Okay, so let us move next. You're okay to stand here. No, you're standing.
Too bad.
This guy got here. No, it wasn't family. That's the one that told me.
Hello?
And then you did.
2 weeks already.
Means my shift's over.
I don't know. Eric can move his feet in his own feet. They get like a Yeah, anyways, that part of the key, so they were, look, volunteers, you know, so they were talking about it. I offered them. Rachel must be back from those shows. Let me know. They still read Brett was making scotch until they were told they don't have to scotch.
People don't get
It's a lot very tasty.
I have no.
Did you get some good pictures in there?
I made it all right. I was trying to go live. I'm learning technology, man. Very slowly. I'm learning how to do it when it takes me. What's that? You must not so much know that. Meet up with Jeff again when a few hours ago next week. Going there, Bernie. You can fly with us. Well, I hear you've been through Granville. You have to go days before, days later.
Thankfully,
I haven't written that part of the
and then I realized I just had to this is what I
must take time to look at that. A few different
for that satellite pad.
Just keep what they want.
That's really tall and stuff. We tried to quit it. It's really tall and stuff.
So you can ask Councillor Baert for ringers off or am I?
Yeah, I turned my phone off.
She left it in the car.
Can't even override. See, the problem is if I go out, I'm gonna be on the, yeah.
I sold that puzzle spot by now.
Having a phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one says 1650 and 2 seconds. All right, 1650. So I will make a motion to resume the regular meeting agenda at 4:50 p.m. in the council chambers. Seconded, all in favor? Thank you, none opposed, motion carried. All right, so just before we get going with the rest of our regular agenda, thank you to everyone who's here today, and of course the public is always welcome to watch our meetings. We have prescribed ways that the public can participate, so what I just ask is if you have a cell phone on, if you could please turn it off. If you need to come and go during the council meeting, that's totally fine. We just ask that you not take your conversation immediately into the hallway, but try to take it outside. And with that being said, I recognize that now we've shifted out of the theater. There's still a few people in there and it'll be a little bit noisy in the next few minutes, but we'll all do our best to stay focused. And we'll start with the regular business of our meeting. So the first item is the minutes from the regular council meeting held May 14th, 2019 for adoption.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions in the minutes? Right, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And then we have minutes of the special council meeting that was held May 21st, 2019.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? Nope. Seeing none. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. So public comment on agenda items. We have 3 people signed up, and so you each have 2 minutes to address council, and we just ask that you come up to the podium, please. And we do have a little timer that helps us keep time. And the first is JJ Belanger, who is here to speak to item 11.2. Thank you, JJ.
My 2 cents in 2 minutes. The motion being brought forward by Councillor Baert today to amend Bylaw 770 to stop any further commercial accommodations from being built in our community is extremely concerning. It is already in the district's hands to limit development as it sees fit at any date and to date they've done a very good job. The examples are Park Bridge, which didn't go ahead, and Woodsmere with the 60-room hotel. By allowing this motion, I feel that you would be destroying the resort's current values, as well as current and future funding agreements that they have in place, putting some of them at extremely great risk. Also, the devaluation of the current resorts with this motion would greatly impact the current taxation that the district needs to move forward with their future infrastructure plans. I I feel that the district will be hit by multiple lawsuits due to this motion, and the money required to defend these can be better used on infrastructure. Councillor Baert and the community seems to think that the resorts are to blame for the overpopulation. With the district having allowed Airbnb listings to grow to over 275 in the past few years, relatively unchecked, this has become the only reason we're seeing over 275 more cars. And with the Tourism Tofino multiplier of 3.3 people per unit, that adds 900 more people in our area per day. This is triple the amount of any people staying at a large resort in our town. This is also the reason we have a housing issue. The only addition to the resorts in the past 10 years has been 42 units of Pacific Sands. That's about 6% growth in over a decade, which is not much. Many resorts do not have plans to expand anytime soon. However, some properties will never be able to meet their financial obligations if they cannot develop at a future date. In the end, I'm asking that you not pass this motion and that you keep doing the great job that you do in managing the future development with keeping both the resort owners' needs and community in mind.
Thank you. Our second speaker is Kevin Midgley, and he is here to speak to item 9.2.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, a little history. I must apologize to the citizens of Tofino and to you for my failure during my time on the design review panel. I failed to realize the sight lines presented in the plans for the shore building were not going to be there after construction. The design panel understood that from the street that there would be a view down to the water through the keyhole in the building. However, because of changed elevations, the view disappeared, leaving us only with the view to the mountains. The view that was supposed to be there was part of the design trade-offs that sometimes occur during the design of the building and was supposed to provide more visual benefit to the town. Tied into these trade-offs in design of the shore building was the waterfront pathway and access to the water on the docks. I don't believe the town received any specific amenities for allowing the construction of the building of the shore other than the waterfront walkway and access through the keyhole to the dock and floats of the development. Access to the floats was in effect the public parkland we, the citizens, received as part of the development. The public access costs the developer nothing as the floats were being constructed anyway, but they have provided huge benefit to the community. Without the access to the docks, the public loses a public amenity which is costing the town nothing to maintain. No taxes are being spent on it. It is sheer foolishness to give away such an amenity so hard won during construction and design review negotiations. Please remember that there is no public tax money involved in maintaining the water access, unlike the other public docks in Tofino. If they may be allowed to suggest such things, I would request that our new, young, and enthusiastic town planner tries to obtain more of the background information when proposals such as this come before him. Please refuse the Moss development request. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And our third and final speaker is Charles McDiarmid, here to speak to item 11.2 as well. Hi,
Thank
Charles.
you, Mayor and Council, and for this opportunity. I'll be brief, but I do want to say in regards to Dorothy Baert's motion 11.2, this town was built by people like Tom Gibson who faced challenges. When we didn't have enough water here, they went to Mears Island and built a submarine pipeline to supply it. They didn't just lock the gate and throw away the key. They found a solution, and they managed a solution. When issues such as logging faced our area, people like you, Dorothy, and Maureen, and many others stood up to say this isn't the right thing for our area and for our province. We've always been a town of looking ahead and recognizing what needs to be done and what should be done. When we needed, we saw that the national park was, Long Beach was turning into a Coney Island. A national park was created. All of these things came from this town, and today proposing a moratorium on development on already zoned land is just not a solution. We can be more creative. We should be more creative. This is a challenge we can deal with. You have the tools already in your toolkit to do that. My concern is anytime you want to lock the gate and throw away the key, that builds up a pressure that when that dam breaks, a lot of development can happen that will not be in our best interest. And I think that's really an important aspect. You can approve good developments, make sure the things that are done are proper and in the interest of our community, and for sure we need more residential housing. It's coming, it's being done right, I can see it. There are proposals that are already in the works that will help meet that. And so I just encourage you to be a little bit more creative, find a solution without resorting to a radical policy that I don't think is in all our best interest. And we have also, as well, a very large expense coming for a liquid waste management plan. It will be good to have some development to help pay for that. So thank you, and all the best in your decisions.
Thank you, Charles. All right, we're going to now move on to our delegations, and we have 2 today. And delegations are folks who sign up well in advance, and they have the opportunity to speak for up to 10 minutes. So our first delegation is from Sabrina, Donovan, and Duane. They're here on behalf of the Tofino Enrichment Society to talk to council about the Canada Day fundraiser. So thanks, both of you, for coming. And we've reset the timer, so we can watch it there.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, we were recommended to come and present to council today just in regards to the annual fundraiser that we have held up until last year for a number of years on Canada Day. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. And it's typically always been a fundraiser that goes back into the community for different things such as the skate park that everyone knows and uses today. So we, I think, more or less just wanted to come to you today to see sort of recommendations on how we want to see it play out, because we've heard some conflicting opinions on what has happened in the past and how we should move forward with it.
Exactly. Yeah, so I've been the one attending the meetings, and I think we started getting what I'll call a little bit of confusion, because I wasn't at the original meeting that I understand Josie and the sergeant for the RCMP had attended for the Rec Commission, and so I came in after the fact and had heard there were some concerns, and so we understood and took that back to the Enrichment Society, and we have come up with some unique ideas to where we'd like to see to take this in the future and have it what I would call more of a food event with sort of alcohol sales being secondary. Unfortunately, with what I would call more short timing and trying to understand sort of what the market would bear, and that we're not too sure if we'd be able to pull off what we refer to as a MUPS up or a boat to tailgate event for this year. So we're hoping that our proposal going forward will include the festivities as they have been in the past. And I also, now wearing my fire department hat, with the Firewood Society, we have discussed the Fire Society being present to have a barbecue. And in fact, we actually understand right now that there's been no food vendors that have stepped forward for the Canada Day celebrations. And also we are discussing having food for actually the whole day. So not only the later activity from the 4 to 8 licensing that we're looking for, but actually for the whole day there. So, which would be a fundraising event that would go to different organizations. So.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thanks. Great. No, and we have a report later on the agenda, of course, that our staff have written about the whole event. So I think this is an opportunity for anyone on council to ask any questions of what you've said, or even of some of what's in the report. If anybody has any questions. Councillor Baert?
Well, thank you. So I wasn't at the meeting either. So what would be the concerns that were raised that motivated you to come in and feel that you needed to speak to this, because it has gone on for so long? Just
Well,
be
as
familiar.
Yeah, no, as I said, it wasn't, and my understanding was a Rec Commission meeting that Josie and the sergeant were at, so I'll probably give Josie a quick second and maybe sort of summarize, but I think for us, just so you know, the Enrichment Society is a separate, it was obviously designed to be a non-profit fundraising arm originally for the skate park, and then it's just obviously continued for the Rec Commission. So we generally raise funds, and then those funds go to playgrounds and skate parks and the bike park up at the community center and various other recreational facilities in town. And our main sort of thrust has always been the Canada Day celebration. So last year it was canceled due to, from my best understanding, that the RCMP detachment wasn't built and they were short manpower. And then this year, with the detachment opening relatively soon, and that, I think there is now, which Jill see maybe to say a few words. And then, so when I got to the rec commission meeting, it was basically there seemed to be a concern about the alcohol event, maybe on public property, but as I said, I don't understand the full. So what I was hoping to do from this meeting was A, to get clarity, and B, to present that we are looking for, like, we have heard some of the concerns and we are moving forward to making it a more food event, I guess is the best way to put it.
And we'd also like to see it, as said, like a more boat to tailgate, like family friendly, children would be allowed in. It's not just alcohol being served in the basketball court where everyone's.
In fact, this year we're actually hoping that the license will allow minors in as well, so families could attend while the skate contest is going on.
Thanks. So to connect the dots, this follows on the conversation council had when we received the rec commission minutes, and so myself and Councillor Steer and the sergeant were there discussing the idea of reprofiling the event so that it wasn't so alcohol facing, and that it could it still be a fundraiser but include food, and just starting to begin a conversation or dialogue about the use of alcohol on public property and taking into account the more vulnerable parts of our population and making sure that everybody feels welcome at events that are hosted in the Village Green. And I think the report we're going to consider later today does a really great job of addressing exactly that dialogue. And Councillor Steer, did you want to add anything?
No, and I think part of the conversation stemmed out of a presentation from the medical health officer, which one of the #1 concerns they had from a regional level was alcohol is the #1 medical health issue. And so we just wanted to open up that dialogue from the community level, and this just happened to be one event. And it was, I've been on the rec commission for many years, and it was an event that we've always had, and one of the concerns that also is there, that an event that ultimately the money was often going towards kids programming and what having to have something, a beer garden specific to fundraising for children's events, there seemed to be a slight disconnect in that. And so we just wanted to continue that conversation with the rec commission and forward it to the Enrichment Society.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that, and I've had chats with a few of the councillors and obviously the Enrichment Society and Rec Commission and Fire Department, and we are looking at trying to embellish it next year, where it'll be a lot more kind of put out a food event, and we think it'll be a local food event.
That's great, thanks. Okay, any other questions or nope? All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we go to the next delegation, could somebody please open the door and maybe a window? Thanks. Super awesome stuff. Thanks. Yeah, come on in. Leave the door open, Eric. That's great. Now that the people next door have pretty much moved out, I think we're fine to keep that going. Good, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Rachel Sutton up. And Jay is going to join. Thank you very much. Okay, the floor is yours.
Councillors, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I respect that you're in an extremely busy growth state. And so thank you. I really appreciate the few minutes we get to talk. This is my friend Jay Roberts, father of Ayla and Sage, and I'm mother of Gracie. We're here today because in 2011, I spent what savings I had as a naturopath and a yoga teacher to buy a really beautiful property out by Cox Bay. And when I bought it, I was under, excuse me, I'm getting a little nervous. I was under the impression that it was 2.06 acres. So being a forward-thinking woman who had a baby with a surfer, I thought, just in case things do not go according to the plan of us staying together as a family, I'd like to invest my money in a growing forward-thinking community, and I'd like the option of being able to subdivide that land so that I can provide dental care for my child, have her enrolled in awesome programs that I see are materializing here, and also so that I can keep my role in this community. So currently I run a really successful vacation rental. Again, thank you so much for that opportunity on the land. And I teach yoga. I'd like to go back to naturopathy. Gracie's thriving here. And Jay and Shauna, his partner Shauna, and I have been friends for many years. So Jay and Shauna started Tofino Nature Kids. I used to run a daycare at my property. But just looking at things fiscally in view of the fact that I understand and support the reasons property taxes need to go up. My child is getting supreme benefit from everything that's happening in the wake of taxes going up. So I'm actually understanding that, and I think I can make enough money to be able to pay my taxes. Ideally, I'd like to see the subdivide happen on the land so that I could look at selling to dear friends of mine. We have super like-minded values. We would like to create a permaculture garden on the land. We'd like to keep the trees as they are. We don't particularly want to deforest the area, and we don't want it to become like a party zone or many condos, or we're not really looking for that. We're looking for two families to live side by side. I am parenting solo, but of course I call myself a solo parent, not a single mother, because I'm supported by my community. And the tussle that we're having is that Tofino as a district puts its mandate on top of what land titles is. So land titles comes up as a legal document, and it says Rachel Sutton is owner of 2.06 acres, 1430 Pacific Rim Highway. However, the district has put its template on top of the land, claiming that it's 1.76 acres. And how the justification occurs is that I have a long driveway that's seen as a panhandle going to my property that's considered district or public land because there are offshoots, other driveways going to my property is tucked right at the back, and so there are a number of other properties. I maintain my driveway, so I call Pro Excavating and pay them the money to help bring gravel and then rake that gravel out. So district doesn't actually maintain my driveway. And I guess I would ask, can we reconsider in view of people with kids, people who have a vested interest in this community, people who've weathered storms. I defaulted on the mortgage 9 times when I had the daycare for the sake of providing quality care for the kids here. Could we look at what land titles is saying and further muscle to that? Can we talk finances in that a subdivide is a $20,000 opportunity for the district, and I happen to have that in savings and lines of credit. We also have a super skilled Red Seal builder right here, and a great communicator, Waldorf-trained teacher as well. It would be awesome for us to be able to chat amongst ourselves. He's probably going to take the green route on his side of the land, so could potentially be creating structures that are showcasing what Tofino stands for. I have a closet agenda of a roller skating rink on my land, but I think we could put it aside because I know that we're going to be getting another structure that I might be possibly able to teach roller skating on. And so what we're looking at is people with kids, people with lots of education, people with vitality and love of this area. It's not super relevant. I'm not a substance user. That keeps me vital and buoyant. I love my child. I believe in what we're doing here, and rather than coming at you combatively, I'm saying, can we work together, because I think we've got a really good business partnership, as well as people who are delighted and excited to raise young people in what Tofino's becoming. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm not big on speeches in front of people, but I thought it was important to be here to support Rachel, and of course because it's affecting me and my family personally. So I just wanted to say thank you for hearing us, and also that I think that it's reasonable to say that we can find a way to support each other and make this happen. We want to be here. We want to contribute to the community. We want to grow our family here. We want to contribute to the economy here. And I think that there is a solution to this. And I think that that there is a way to find it. I mean, there's a few things there's gray areas, and I think that we can find a way to work together to make clarity around those things. Thanks for hearing us.
Thank you very much, Rachel and Dave, for coming forward. I can honestly say, in my time on council, I don't think anyone's ever come to address us about a subdivision idea and just speak about their vision for their family and their property, so I really appreciate that. I know that our staff can help you with a lot of the technicalities there, and that we aren't able to answer some of the questions that you brought forward today, but if you haven't already spoken with Aaron or Peter, I definitely direct you there, and then as you go through the process, they can bring forward what needs to be brought forward to council.
Aaron and Peter have come to know us very well.
Okay.
Aaron has actually been with me since I had a breastfeeding infant and a very new marital separation, and ran into his office mildly frantic. So actually, we've all kind of been conspiring together, and it seems in a time where there's growth and change, sometimes there are growing pains. And I just don't feel that I want to be bringing a frantic energy to you when I know that this could be such a beautiful thing. And that each building, which we'd be so happy to invite Peter over to be involved with, is also going to be bringing money in because we need permits for those. So we don't really want to do things in hiding. I can't. My whole profession for a long time was about sourcing out what's really going on with people to get them healthy. And I don't want to do things in hiding, and plus I'm far too lively a character to really be doing things secretly. So if we get this, what you have is a very celebratory team out at Cox Bay, also welcoming visitors from all over the world. And so to keep the smiles alive and the growth happening, we're hoping hard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your
Does
time.
anybody have any questions for Rachel? Yeah, Councillor Anderson.
Have you actually launched a subdivision application or a zoning application? I'm just wondering where you're at, because we have nothing else before us.
I know.
Whatever has happened at the staff level,
I know.
I'm not aware of. We don't
There's been some
check into it in that detail every day.
There's been some Netflix drama, noteworthy, interesting things that have happened on that property when I didn't know what my rights were, and I was very busy with a small child and running a daycare. So there was a whole preceding screenplay that has yet to be written, but one day perhaps could be. And then I've been having lots of dialogue with Peter and Aaron, and also have said, like, hey, $900 is quite a lot to put out, given that we're starting to get to know this piece through the OCP and because it's part of the Cox Bay corridor. So Peter, being a gentleman and a scholar, decided that he might like to put out to the woman who has upcoming braces reality for the 8-year-old in my home, that perhaps I could come and talk to you about this, and we could just say, hey, this is our intention. I can come up with that $900, not super easily, but I can do it. And I'd like to have an idea as to whether it's worth it for me to put the money out, to then put more money out and more money out, which there will be if we get a yes. And so that's why we're feeling the waters, and we're let's be real, we're flirting with you a little bit.
Okay.
We got something to bring to the table.
So, I actually have a question. And when you put forth an application for subdivision, who is the one that oversees that? Who makes the yes or the no on that?
Okay. A subdivision doesn't come to council. A rezoning comes to council. But Peter or Aaron, can you give us a little nutshell of where things are at right now on this property?
If the property is to be rezoned to accommodate a two-lot subdivision, it would need to go through an OCP process first. In the South Tofino rural area, the minimum lot size currently is 5 acres.
Okay, so it's a bureaucratic process. That part of town, it has, under the OCP, looks a certain way, and the zoning permits a certain minimum lot size. And I think what is going on then is you are asking to make some changes to that, and there are a series of steps that you have to go through.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we're willing to do that.
Okay.
Some call it hoops. I call it working in tandem.
Okay.
And we're willing to do whatever you want us to do. But we are, I as a woman am in a position where I've acquired this big thing and worked so diligently for 12 years to make it happen. But I really actually do need to work with another family. I hate this, but I have to say I'm husbandless and partnerless, and so that I need to work with somebody else to be able to flesh out more of what we'd like to do here.
So I, for myself, would say that I would encourage you to submit the application, and then what our staff will do is bring it to council for a permission to proceed, basically, where we would then have the factual information in a report before us, and then we would be able to say to the staff, okay, go forward into the process.
Okay.
Going forward into the process is no guarantee because it has to have public comment, and there's a series of steps that it goes through. But I would encourage you to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go ahead and do due diligence then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Great.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Just make a comment. I don't know if it would help you or not, but we did have recently a health-related use that was trying to be brought into a residential area. I don't know if you followed that or not, but it became quite difficult to get through the whole process. So I'd just like you to understand that not everybody can put up with all the hurdles in the way, and the more uses you have that are outside of sort of what Tofino offers, the more difficult it is. So I'm not trying to dissuade you from moving ahead or anything, but I do want you to understand that eventually in that case, the people pulled their application and gave up.
Are you speaking about the property at the end of Dean
Yeah.
Street? Okay.
Yeah.
So Councillor Anderson is speaking about a property where it was an existing house that the owners began a rezoning to turn into a commercial use. I don't think that's what you're proposing.
No,
Okay.
I love being a
Yeah.
vacation rental owner, happy vacation rental owner, and in compliance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And love reading when I speak.
Well, just
Spanish.
because I haven't seen anything, I was wondering, I don't know what you're asking for really right now.
We're just asking, like, if it's a long,
No, we'll
had
need
enough
the
in?
details in the
That's
report
why,
eventually.
once we get the report after the application,
You need a visual, and
will be-
you need some more details.
you got it.
Okay, well, you've been really awesome in letting us test the waters, and it was a little comedy break, I think, was also some levity.
I gotta say, thanks for that. That's great.
It helped me get over the nerves.
Well, you did a fantastic job. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Jason, for being here. Nice work. I don't think we've ever had a delegation that got an applause before. That's really great. Okay, so we're going to move on into the correspondence section of our agenda. And first we have a letter from Mr. Greig regarding pedestrian safety at Chesterman Beach Road and Pacific Rim Highway Crossing. And this is something that we've considered in the past, and I know there's a little bit of email traffic, and we've made a request to the ministry to reduce the speed limit as per their letter, but I'll put it back to you, Bob, and say,
Sure.
What is the update?
I don't have an update on what's happening with the speed limit. We will try and track that down. This is the first I've heard of the idea of a pedestrian crossing, but we can pass this along to the Ministry of Transportation and Highways. I think that as a rule where we can enhance pedestrian safety, we're very much in favor of it. So we'd be happy to speak supportively with the ministry about both of these ideas. Just as I think as council is aware, there are a couple of new pedestrian crossings that are planned for the Mackenzie Beach area. They do take years to get through the province, the province's approval. We can get this one going a little bit.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
So can I ask, do you want to motion formally to refer this to staff for further discussions with Minister of Transport?
Sure. Thank you,
I would make
Councillor
that
Baert.
motion.
All right, moved by Councillor Baert, then refer to staff. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Was that an opposition? No, I didn't think so. All right, our second letter is from Mara Love regarding beach fires on Chesterman Beach. And of course, we have received letters like this in the past, and we're well aware that this is an issue that's particularly irritating. And anybody have any questions, or did staff have any comment about this? I know we're moving ahead with some new regulations this summer, and it's quite likely we won't be having any campfires in the district of Tofino pretty soon.
I think looking at how dry it is, I'm expecting that sometime this summer that there'll be a fire ban for the coastal area, which will no longer have an exemption from. The other comment is we are working on some signs to go up to the beach entrances to remind people of fire regulations, similar to the signs that will be requiring people to provide, the information will be requiring people to provide when they're selling firewood. So that's a first step, and we'll kind of see how it goes, and then adjust as necessary in coming years.
Thanks. Councillor Baert.
Just wondering if you have a date that you're expecting this to be done?
I do not have a date. I know the signs are with the sign maker now, but I don't know when we'll have them back.
Okay, satisfies, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? None? All right. Okay, so first report today is the Canada Day Celebration Fundraiser Barbecue that we heard about from Sabrina and Duane earlier. And our staff has provided us with a report that describes the nature of the event that would take place from 4 to 8 p.m. on July 1st. And so there's a few things that we need to consider. First is an authorization for the Tofino Enrichment Society to do this event. And the second is supporting their application for a special occasion liquor license for that. And then finally, that recreation staff be authorized to support that event as outlined in the report. Did you have any opening comments you wanted to make, Erin? No? Okay. So did anyone have any questions about this or comments? Councillor Steer?
Well, I was quite pleased to see that the recommendations that we had discussed at the Rec Commission meeting that had been brought forward that were taken seriously. Mm-hmm. And I was quite pleased by the reception of this report. There was just one question in terms of, there was some concerns around staffing, district staffing ability due with maternity leaves and what have you. And just to make sure that at this point that's still okay, that we have the support that's necessary through the Enrichment and Rec Commission to carry all of the activities that were needed at the time.
Yeah, I think staff is comfortable with the work plan as indicated on Appendix 1.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, then we can turn our mind to the motions.
I'll move that the Tofino Enrichment Society be authorized to hold a fundraising event in the Village Green Park basketball courts on Monday, July 1st, 2019 from 4 until 8 p.m., which would include food, alcoholic and non-alcoholic drink sales for the purpose of fundraising for the new indoor recreation facility.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions about that one? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carried.
And that the District of Tofino Council supports the Tofino Enrichment Society's application for a special occasion liquor license for a fundraising event in the Village Green Park basketball courts on Monday, July 1st, 2019.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions about that one? All right. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried.
And that the recreation staff be authorized to support the Tofino Enrichment Society's fundraising event as outlined in Appendix 1 to the report titled Canada Day Celebration Fundraiser Barbecue dated May 28th, 2019.
Second.
Great. Moved and seconded. Any questions? All right. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. All right. Thank you. Thanks to the Enrichment Society and thanks to our staff for a great report. And like Councillor Steer said, I'm really pleased to see that the dialogue was helpful, and I think the event's kind of being reshaped to something that's even more accessible and friendly, and I really appreciate that. And I'm going to volunteer at the event because I know they are slightly short-staffed, and I would challenge council. You sign up for a slot to volunteer there too. I'm volunteering. All right, Councillor Chalmers advance. You can flip a burger like nobody's business. All right, excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, see y'all on Canada Day. Okay, so our next item is the Moss Development sublease, and there's a report from our staff around some changes there. Did you have do you have a presentation, or did you want to?
I have a 5-slide presentation that just runs over.
Sure. Great. Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
A little hard to understand the access on.
There's some front row seats if you want to have a seat, or some second row seats. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you. Good evening.
This is a presentation based on the report in front of council. It's to do with amending a sublease the district is named in for public access to the docks in front of the shore building. The applicant has asked us to amend the current sublease to address some issues that they have with the operation of the dock. We received the access as an amenity through the development of the shore building in 2006. It was for public access, and because of the nature of the access, it being on foreshore, we couldn't actually get a statutory right-of-way, so it's actually a sublease to the existing water lease, and we have that lease for until 2042, so probably another 20-odd years. So the existing configuration is shown, let's get this to work. So the existing configuration is the sort of polka dot area here. It turns out the dock is not actually configured like this anymore, so this is not quite accurate. And the applicant has some issues with the public accessing this section of the dock, which is where the district actually has rights to 3 pickup and drop off spots. The applicant is proposing to move the access to the base of the dock, so the public, we would still have public access to the dock and the slips. And that was the reason at the beginning we had access, was to actually have these drop off spots, was the intent of the original agreement. It only requires a council resolution for staff to work with the applicant to amend sublease, because the amenity still would remain. We still have to maintain public access and our boat slips. And so this is why I'm in front of you today on behalf of the applicant. Does this council make questions or comments?
Thank you. I have a question, but I'll see if others have a question first. Councillor Anderson?
This, because that's not set into the footprint of the property, I don't understand that at all, that configuration, how it sits.
So if you sort of look, this is this building here would be the dock building, where events are held, so weddings.
Okay.
And so this piece right here, which is the base where the ramp goes down onto the ramp, is this section right here. So the configuration's actually changed. So the previous one wouldn't actually help you too much.
That's when you walk down the ramp, this is the first finger you would see, and this is the current layout. This is the old layout. This is the big shot of right here. The shore hotels are the.
So the public access across the front of or on the water side of the property would no longer exist?
No. So this is all water. We're white. Maybe I should color it blue. But so we would have access to the dock and the ocean through the orange sections highlighted there. Right now, we have access over the entire docks to access these 3 boat slips.
Right, so currently, the way the agreement reads, the public has access to go down the ramp along the floats out to the outside edge to catch a boat that can come in. But the proposal would be to take away the long access on the public and just have the public come down to the first finger and then be able to access the boats there.
Yeah,
so they would no longer be able to walk across the entire marina, basically.
And the purpose was never for, a place for people to go sort of hang out or look around. It was always intended for access to these 3 slips.
Like at Stubbs Island when it opens on the long weekend. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, it can get pretty awkward, and also with weather and commercial operations happening on other parts of the dock, it'd probably be a safer, more a nicer place for people to disembark closer to the shore, especially if someone has mobility issues. For a variety of reasons, this is probably not a terrible idea.
So, related to this, my one question is there as much deep water access in the new proposal as there is in the former way, or the way that it is now, so that the same size boat can come in, or is it just for kayaks and canoes?
From what I understand, there is access, but I haven't actually checked in with Thomas about that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor
Steer.
I could speak to the access. But,
great.
So the prime concern would be for safety. And then there's also considerations, the existing space up there is extremely difficult. I use that space quite regularly because of the configuration of Method Marine and the fuel dock that's on the other side, where there's less access to those spaces as well. So that, I would assume, is probably one of the other main reasons those spaces aren't as accessible as these inside ones would be.
Yes, as I understand it, there's some issues with the proximity of the dock, which is in its right place, but the proximity makes it difficult for some boaters to for sure access the dock.
Thank you. Councillor Baert.
Yeah, thank you. About the deep water as well, it concerned me because it depends on what the intention is around drop-off. I think that's important information to have. Also, it looks to me like the dock that would go in the front of the event space and the shore originally wrapped around, but actually has expanded, so it's a much longer finger that goes double. It has doubled in size, and then there's
so foreshore docks are not within our authority. Right. So I know they're apparently within their footprints.
Yeah, but we had access to those docks under the old agreement. Now it's and it was for the purpose of boat drop-offs and that kind of thing.
Yes, we only had access.
And now that's to move closer to the shore, but we don't know if it's actually usable as a deeper water access. Yep. I wouldn't be satisfied with making any change unless I knew that. Okay, certainty.
May I propose if the council was generally in favor of moving forward with that rider, that staff ensures that the access to deep water, and we can do some more work on that, rather than having us go back to council to ask it again.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel better about that. The other thing that I thought was interesting, Mr. Midgley talked about in the zoning, was this idea of park space and amenities. And I don't know if that really was a term, or what were the terms of the amenities and how that ties in. Because it is useful to know that if something was agreed to, and then I think we should be flexible to adjust as is practically necessary, but also amenities aren't a short-term thing.
No, so public access for the purposes of having a drop-off space was the amenity, and I wasn't part of those negotiations prior to my time in the district. Again, we're not looking to take that right away. I think the applicant is asking to modify that.
Okay,
thank you. Councillor McLeod?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with going forward in the manner that you suggested. I'd also like to look into the length of the dock and some consideration taken into the fact that the Atleo Air dock is in quite close proximity to this. And so at the end, you do have 2 to 3 planes and then a number of tour operators all here. So this is actually one of the things noted is that this is difficult for inexperienced mariners to access the outside finger. I would argue that the inside, going by 3 planes and multiple tour operators, is going to be equally, if not more, difficult.
Point taken. I think for myself, and I will talk to the applicant about this. This is a situation where I'm not an expert and potentially, except for potentially council or maybe not experts in dock movements. I've worked on them, so I just don't know how to judge whether I have to go with what I'm being told to some extent. I can go down and do some investigation and try to understand for myself, but I don't want to get stuck into
I think if it's commensurate length and deep water access are fine matrices for me to judge by, but it is difficult. If you're an inexperienced boat driver, that's going to be a tricky place to get a boat in and out of quickly and safely for drop-off.
Sorry if I may add, in all tides, Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
What the district gained at that time was, I think one of the goals was also to support the idea of a public walkway along the harbor. And I just want to make sure that we're not losing that goal among the discussion about the docks.
We have a statutory right of way for that portion of the access.
Okay.
The reason we had to do a sublease was again because this is waterlocked. So when the district originally considered this, we thought we could do a statutory right of way over the water. That's not a thing you can do. So the sublease connects to the terrestrial statutory right of way.
Okay.
Okay, I think I got the right language here. I'm going to run it by you. It would be the recommendation as it's written, and subject to staff confirming that deep water access is available at all tide levels and that the same length of float is available for tie-up. Does that seem clear? Okay. And so what that would be, if this motion passes then, is that everything can move ahead subject to our staff confirming that those two conditions are met. Okay. And if it's not, they'll come back. All right. So in that case, would somebody like to make the recommendation? Move it?
You have it written right there. I'll read it.
How about I'll move it?
Why don't you move it?
Okay, so I'll move that staff be authorized to amend the Moss Development Inc. sublease attached as Appendix 1 to the May 28, 2019 Moss Development Inc. sublease report to council as follows. Public access and boat parking to be relocated as shown in the sketch attached as Appendix 3 to the May 28, 2019 Moss sublease report to council, and subject to staff confirming that deep water access is available at all tide levels and that the same length of float is available for tie-up. Thank you, seconded. And I did write this down, so I can give it to you. All right, thank you. So that's moved and seconded. Any questions? All right, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. All right, the next is a report from our staff about meeting procedure amendments, and this is something that we've discussed twice at Council and Committee of the Whole, and so thank you, Elise, for bringing forward the amending bylaw. Did anybody have any questions? Everybody okay with how it is then? All right.
I'll move the recommendation that District of Tofino Meeting Procedures Amendment Bylaw number 1229.01 2019 attached as Appendix 1 to the report titled Meeting Procedure Amendments dated May 28, 2019 be introduced and read a first, second and third time, and that staff be directed to provide notice to the public in accordance with sections 94 and 124 clause 3 of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. All right, Peter is going to present to us the information around the zoning amendment application for the Gas and Go at 901 Campbell Street. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is basically introductory report for a zoning amendment application that was received by staff for the Gas and Go location, 901 Campbell Street. This is being presented as a permission to proceed report. So pending approval of this particular step, we would then move into the full bylaw preparation and the zoning amendment bylaw stages. So a little bit of background, this application was received on September 11th, 2018. There is no housing attached to this application, so due to the kind of housing first direction that we're approaching rezoning applications, it's been a little bit on the back burner for the last several months. So the location is the Gas and Go former Esso gas station. It's on the right-hand side of Campbell Street as you're coming out of town, just before you approach the Ewood subdivision. You may have driven past it once or twice. So the proposal is a zoning amendment that would allow the sale of alcohol on the subject property. So alcohol sales would be located within the existing convenience store. There'd be no changes to the form and character of the building. It is worth noting that within the C2 zone, I believe, there is, actually, sorry, I think this one's in the C3 zone, I can't remember exactly, but the convenience store is only allowed to be 1,000 square feet, and currently that convenience store is legally non-conforming. They're larger than the permitted size of convenience store associated with the particular zoning. So they would not be able to expand it any further. However, they could keep it the same size, and the proposal is to allow alcohol sales within the existing store. So here's a quick little layout of the proposal. The proposed liquor store area, there's a current entrance, and it would be on the right-hand side as you enter the building. My understanding is that the applicants are proposing to put an extra entrance on what would be, I guess, the north side of the building, which is kind of the shorter side if you're facing the screen on the right-hand side there. So it would be an entrance directly into the proposed liquor store area. They'd be looking at potentially hiring an additional 2 to 3 staff to staff that area, and it would be essentially closed off to a certain extent from the rest of the store to prevent minors from entering. So a quick rendering of what would happen. Again, The actual footprint of the store is not changing, but there would be some updates to the exterior, including an additional entrance, as well as some updates to probably paint and siding and those kinds of things as well. So looking a little bit at the policies that guide these kinds of decisions, with the vision to action document, there's not a lot of statements pertaining directly to liquor stores and the sale of alcohol, but there is quite a bit that discusses the kind of encouragement of a strong and diverse economy. So pulling a couple statements out of there related to improving the economy and improving opportunities for business to thrive within the district. Within the OCP, the property is designated within the Clackapuw Estates. The Clackapuw Estates designation is intended as a residential neighborhood with limited commercial activity permitted in what's described as a neighborhood node. These neighborhood nodes have not been located, so we actually have kind of discussions about them, particularly within the neighborhood areas of the official community plan. However, we haven't actually identified them geographically on a map as of yet. It is worth noting also within the OCP, some of the commercial policies, that additional highway commercial development is discouraged. However, in the view of staff, this isn't a change of use or a change in the actual layout of the lot. It's simply a change in the product being sold. So we're still looking at retail sales establishments. This would just allow them to sell. So within the zoning bylaw, the property is zoned highway commercial district, C4. I apologize for not getting that right earlier. So alcohol sale is not a permitted use within this zone. So even though retail sales are permitted within the zone, within an established convenience store, they're identified elsewhere in the zoning bylaw, and so can't be just kind of thrown under the umbrella term of retail sales. So this amendment would allow alcohol sale on the property, but only on that particular subject property. So what it would probably look like, this would be kind of ironed out during the bylaw preparation stage, but what it would probably look like would be an additional use added within the C4 zone restricted to that particular property, and then adding a definition within the zoning bylaw to describe that use. So a few land use considerations regarding this particular application. One would be traffic, whether or not traffic would be increasing off of the highway onto that particular property. It may be necessary to look at requesting a traffic impact assessment. That would be something that we would discuss potentially after first reading or within the first reading kind of framework. Servicing as well, there isn't going to be any major updates to servicing needed that staff can predict, seeing as we're not changing the building at all, we're simply adding some new products into the store. There may be an amenity contribution necessary. We would take a look at potential land lift associated with this rezoning or some other way to deal with that, and look to the community amenity contribution policy to see what would be appropriate in this particular situation. Parking is not a major concern. The demand for parking may increase as this service is introduced. However, within the zoning bylaw, parking is adequate or more than adequate currently. And then also one other idea is this kind of larger idea of a neighborhood node. It doesn't necessarily restrict or apply directly to this application, but a neighborhood node has not been necessarily identified for each of these neighborhoods. Some of them kind of have neighborhood nodes as out of default, such as the outside break area where the Surf Beaches complex is kind of the one commercial hub in that area. But adding more commercial uses to this particular area might kind of default this into becoming something of a neighborhood node, or be the place where more commercial services could potentially be considered for a future location within this particular area. That also has a bit of a dependence on the way our OCP process moves forward within the next year and a half as well. So a few of the options presented. We can proceed with the zoning amendment application. That would basically mean that we go through with preparing the bylaw and the rest of the bylaw amendment stages. We can reject or refuse the application, or defer otherwise deal with the application. So next steps, should we choose to proceed, would be to create the zoning amendment bylaw. We would then move to first reading. Following first reading, do some referrals, amending discussions, any other concerns that maybe have been brought up. Move to second reading, public hearing. Following that would be third reading, any final considerations, and then adoption. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you. Councillor Chalmers, and then Councillor McMaster. Did you hear that? Nope. Okay. 2 minutes. All right. And then Councillor.
I'm just wondering if this would be a platform that we could kind of mirror what we've been doing with cannabis and look at social procurement. Is this somewhere, because it is alcohol? I don't.
Yeah, no. Thanks for the question. And we had that long and hard discussion with the cannabis around using temporary use permits or rezoning as a way of incentivizing more social benefits. So Aaron, I think Aaron is of the opinion that this is the place to do it more suitably through a rezoning. All right. Good. He's nodding his head, just for the record. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Excuse me. My question is about an amendment versus a rezoning. Does it amount to the same thing, has the same public hearing requirements, etc.? Yes.
Yeah, so
it's not much different than a rezoning, really.
it's a semantic thing. So when we talk about a rezoning, we're speaking about a zoning amendment. It's we're amending the zoning bylaw, so it's the exact same thing.
So because it's amendment to C4 zone, and it's what makes it specific to the property if there's another C4 zone somewhere else?
So what we would do is kind of add a section underneath the C4 zone that says additional uses permitted or something to that effect, and then we would identify that particular property by its sort of district law and PID and all those kinds of things, and then say in addition to the uses listed above, this particular use is permitted on this property, and then make sure that we define that use within the definitions. That would be one way to do it, and I think that would be the way we do it, but that might be a discussion as we draft the bylaw as well.
Because I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be better to deal with it as a rezoning rather than an amendment to the zoning. Because of a couple things. I think there's some opportunities to maybe get some bike path in front of it, or other things might be of interest to the district in working it as a rezoning rather than an amendment to zoning. I'm not sure if the trailer park has access through the property or not. I know they go through the property, but I don't know if it's legally put there. So also landscaping and design, although they did a rendering, I'm not sure if the design review panel and permitting process how does that get covered off if the design permit process doesn't apply to the property? Those are my questions.
So on the zoning amendment versus the rezoning, it'll be the same.
Okay.
So we'll have the same conversation about amenities, and I think it's just like Peter said, a semantics thing, whether it's called a zoning amendment or a rezoning. So that, I think the first part of your comment is satisfied. This isn't in a DPA, is it, that would trigger the design review panel?
It's not in a forming character DPA.
No.
There's a section of the riparian DPA that extends onto, I guess it would be the southern portion of the property.
Right.
But that would not be included in this. We're not, DPs are triggered by subdivision and building permit. This is not being subdivided, and it's still uncertain whether or not there will be a building permit necessary.
Okay. And since Councillor Anderson asked, I've always been curious, who owns the driveway into Mr. Karowski's property there with the...
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Aaron may be able to comment on that, or the CAO may be able to comment on that.
The land is owned by Gas and Go.
Okay.
So there isn't like a panhandle out, or there isn't a public roadway there.
Right.
And Aaron, feel free to contradict, but that's what our research has
Right.
shown. And I don't know if there's a easement in favor of the trailer park across the Gas and Go property or not, but yeah, good question. It would show entitled if there is.
Right.
And then the other thing is, I'm always leery, I guess, when we're shown a great rendering of something, but we don't have a process in place to make sure that we can hold them to that product at the end of the day. So I don't know what that means. I would love to see the property sort of improved and brought to a better standard. But, so those are the concerns I have around it. My first take was I really don't want to expand alcohol sales in the district at this point, but there's some traffic movement that is a good consideration too. It brings less cars into the downtown where there's a higher demand for parking and so on. So I'm certainly willing to consider the application. Those are my concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Steer and then Councillor McMaster.
I have some major concerns, and it's regarding, once again, we've had many discussions regarding access to alcohol within. We have currently 2 venues in town. We also have, in terms of that traffic, we have the Tofino Brewery and the new distillery out there. I'm not going to support this in the sense of we've had presentations from our medical health officer explaining that it is the #1 public health issue in our region, giving further access to a product that we know has those impacts on the community. To further that, I don't think is in the best interest of this community. So I will not be inclined to further this.
Thank you. Councillor McMaster.
I was going to say very much the same. I remember when we had the presentation from the health officer, and this council specifically asked what they could do to help with this alcohol problem. So I'd throw it back at council and ask us all if allowing more liquor outlets is helping to solve the problem. So I won't support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Baert.
Well, I wasn't here for Dr. Hasselbeck's presentation, but I certainly heard about it and agree that, there's a number of factors that we have to be mindful of when we make this kind of decision. We are allowing cannabis retail. We don't know how many outlets. As mentioned, there's a brew pub essentially, and spirits distillery. There's 2 liquor stores downtown. In a sense, we don't really have a policy or framework to say, well, with hotels and resorts, they have lounges and so forth. Really, how much do we need of that? But we don't have kind of a licensing framework around when is enough in a number of areas, and I don't know how we tackle that. So even if I were interested to say, okay, let's take it further, there's questions I would have, like, this is, an ask from the municipality to operate this. And for the cannabis retail, in that ask, we said, okay, so what's the quid pro quo? That is something you're prepared to put back to the community. And some of it would be around, just the design, the front facing. What is it uplifting to the experience of, retail in Tofino, and what are you putting out there? Or housing, you have 2 to 3 staff. There's 0 occupancy. What's your proposal on housing? This is a community where employing people means providing housing. It just is that way. And in the neighborhood, I'd sure want to know what the trailer park, feeling is, but I think that would come down in the process around the readings. But I'm really glad the light was shone on this access question, because that is a remarkable thing to learn, that we have an island of home occupation that technically has no access.
Well, we haven't confirmed that.
No, we haven't confirmed that. It does not have a road access.
Right.
But
it might have an easement.
It might have
a lot should not have been created under the Land Titles Act where there is not some form of legal access. So the lot, the subdivision approving officer, whoever it was at the time, would not have been, and land titles would not have approved a lot that did not have access. You have to prove access to create a lot. So either their access is was shown to be some other location, or there is an easement between the 2 owners, and I don't know if there's an easement between the 2 owners. But it's not our access.
Thank you. Councillor Good.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I have to say, while I do support what Councillor Steer said. I'm hesitant to quash an application for a viable business opportunity without further discussions of amenities. We have had a large discussion around this table about social contribution, etc. And while I understand and commend Councillor Baert for looking at housing, etc., if we're going to look at somebody being allowed to open another liquor store, let's look at commensurate and complementary contributions. If we're going to allow a social license like this to go forward, let's look at how it can be balanced out. Without just saying no. There are multiple points of access for alcohol in this community which are a concern for this council, for the members of our community and our sensitive populations. But I'm hesitant to say no completely to an application that is a viable business opportunity for somebody in this community without hearing what may be the complementary contributions.
Thank you.
So I'd like to go forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Chalmers? Yes, I'd like to mirror what Councillor McQuaid said, and I'd like to go forward and see what happens. Thank you.
And that would have been my conclusion around my notes about the design, the housing, the amenities in the neighborhood is I want to hear more.
Yeah, okay. I concur with that thought too. So I'm not prepared to say no at this point and outright reject it. And I think that there's some interesting comments that have been brought up tonight, and they're all worthy of consideration from the higher kind of policy level look at, like, well, how many liquor stores do we want in this community? And frankly, where are they located? Because we all know other communities somewhat nearby that you have to drive through to get here, where you can see store after store after store. And I know that that community is concerned about the appearance that that has. But there could be some mitigating factors that we're able to negotiate with the property owner around signage and entrance location and other things that don't widely advertise what it is, but enable a business opportunity that also might be able to give them a little bit more income to be able to do some sprucing up, as has been also expressed as a possible concern. So I'm not inclined to say no at this point either. Did anybody have any final thoughts or second thoughts? All right. Then I would look to somebody making the recommendation.
Motion that staff proceed with further review of zoning amendment application for 901 Campbell Street.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded. All right, moved and seconded. Any final questions? Okay, those in agreement? Yes. Thank you. And those in opposition? Thank you. Councillor Steer, Councillor McMaster. The motion passes. All right. Next is the Volunteer Recognition Committee, which met on May 16th, and there are some minutes to be received.
Move receipt.
Thank you. Second. Moved and seconded. Any questions that came out of the minutes? We'll deal with the recommendation in a minute. All right, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? None. Motion carried. So the Volunteer Recognition Committee did talk about some amendments to the terms of reference. And they are that it moved to selecting 2 to 4 recipients annually, that nominations be accepted year-round, but that the considerations by the committee and then council happen twice a year, and that any nomination submitted that isn't successful would be considered up to 2 times so that it would move forward in the system. So if we approve this motion, then our staff will prepare those changes.
I'll make the motion. Don't we read it out?
Yeah, sure.
The Volunteer Recognition Committee terms of reference be amended as follows. Selection of 2 to 4 recipients annually. Nominations to be accepted year-round, and consideration takes place twice per year. And nominations be considered up to 2 times.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion is carried. Okay, moving into bylaws. We have the District of Tofino Building Bylaw 1256, 2019 for 3rd reading.
Move 3rd reading.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. No, I think I read it effectively. Did anyone have any questions? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. The next is the Municipal Ticket Information System Amendment Bylaw, number 1088.06, 2019, for 3rd reading.
Move the recommendation.
Second. Thank you. So 3rd reading is moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. And next is the Bylaw Notice Enforcement and Dispute Adjudication System Amendment Bylaw number 1107.09, 2019 for 3rd reading.
Move 3rd reading.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Opposed. All right, slight change of subject. We have the District of Tofino Single-Use Item Regulation Bylaw number 1263, 2019 for adoption.
Move adoption.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any question, comment? All in favor? Enthusiastically? Yay. Thank you. Motion is carried. And we have the District of Tofino MTI and Bylaw Notice Amendment, Bylaw number 1107.11, 2019 for adoption.
Move adoption.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? None. All in favor? Motion carried. None opposed. And the District of Tofino's Firewood Retail Regulation Bylaw number 1262, 2019 for adoption.
Adoption.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. And the District of Tofino MTI and Bylaw Notice Amendment Bylaw number 1107.10, 2019 for adoption.
Move adoption.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried.
Question?
Yes.
Is there a communication plan in place for notifying the public now?
Of the Firewood
Yeah,
one?
all of the whole.
There certainly is. Yeah, and as part of the presentations that Lease has given us, particularly on the single-use item one, it was accompanied by a whole communication plan.
Was it about the firewood or the?
Sorry, about the
Firewood
single-use
and
item.
Yeah,
for
just
sure.
Basically, there's quite a bundle of items here, and
For the single-use items? Sorry, I couldn't hear what
So
you were
yes,
talking
there
about.
is a communication plan that is already in place for the single-use item bylaw, and I am sure that there is something in
building
place for
bylaws,
the building bylaw. We're only at third reading,
Yeah.
so that'll come into play, and we can talk to Erin about that. And then on the Firewood retail one, yes, yeah.
And on the building bylaw, we have engaged with the building community. There was an open house held here.
Yeah.
I know our building inspector has reached out to people he knows in the building community to discuss the changes and so on, and some of the comments we did receive that have modified the bylaw. So that was very much underway over the last few months.
Good. Thanks for asking. Okay, good. All right, so now we're going to move into business initiated by council members, and the first is a notice of motion from Councillor McMaster regarding tax shifts. Over to you, Councillor McMaster.
Okay, do I read the motion first?
You read the motion and you see if you have a seconder.
Okay. So the motion's two parts. First part is that staff be directed to, and the second part is that council review the tax splits on a regular basis at least every council term.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you. There is a seconder. So over to you.
The reason that I brought this forward is because if you've been reading the press, tax splits have been in the press quite a bit lately. Calgary initially has been moving the tax from the business sector over to the residential sector with the demise of businesses in Calgary. Vancouver and Victoria have gone the other way around. I looked at the tax splits for Tofino, and they have remained virtually the same since 2005. I don't think anyone would argue that things have changed in Tofino quite a bit since 2005. The other thing I noticed is the business multiplier, which is the ratio of the business tax rate to the residential tax rate, varies widely across resort municipalities, from a low of 1.6 in Osoyoos to a high of 4.63, 4.64 in Whistler and Revelstoke. The business multiplier for Tofino was 2.93, which I found surprising was actually lower than that of Ucluelet at 3.26. I find it strange that businesses are paying more tax in Ucluelet than we do here in the multiplier sense. If we look at water consumption for 2015, the residential sector accounts for 32%, the business sector 38%, and processing 13%. I think we know from our tax bills that water is directly related to liquid waste, and I believe that an argument can be made that the business sectors are the chief stressor on infrastructure, whether that be water, sewer, roads, bylaw. So I'm asking staff to take a look at the tax split between the residential and business sectors and see if it is appropriate to change. And the reason I asked council to review this on a regular basis is because I know the financial department does look at it, but I don't think we've ever discussed it at any time at council in my time. So that's the reason.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Questions? I have some comments.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say I support the intention and I want to move forward with this, but I do have an amendment that I want to suggest, and it's in the direction, it's two things. First is that the motion as it's worded right now is focused just on the residential and business classes, and I would like to expand it just to say all property classes, because I think that there are at least two others in our tax base, and I think that general policy should be developed and applied to our tax allocation across all properties.
I think when I said business sectors, that was meant to cover all classes.
Okay, oh good, then you'll love my amendment. And then the second thing is that I just wanted to, I think it would be more appropriate to remove the directionality of this, and instead of saying from residential to business, although I understand your intention around the water use piece, to just talk about tax shift between classes. Because I think that, and I have spoken with Nyla in advance of this motion, and I know that she is interested, I know she's not here tonight, but I know that she's very interested in this. And I think that what she'd like to do is bring back something for council's consideration, not immediately, because she said she can handle about one policy a year, but that addresses all property classes and really looks at the rationale for why we do things since 2005 the way that we do.
The reason I brought this up was I think when Calgary first did the shift, Mayor Nenshi said ideally the split should be 50-50, and I went to Nyla and said, well, why should it be 50-50? And she talked to her peers and nobody could come up with a reason. So then I asked, well, why do we have these splits like this? And still we couldn't get a decent answer. So
yeah, and it's really interesting to me to think about you named water sewer bylaw as services that the municipality provides that businesses obviously get a huge benefit from. I think there are also some services where residents get more of a benefit from than businesses do. But also we have this burning issue really of the fact that we have some short-term rentals in the residential class that are effectively operating businesses. And so we cannot split that class into two subclasses and apply a differential rate. So I see the rationale for moving something from residence to business based on what you said, but then that means the short-term rentals are kind of...
I think we can only deal with what we can.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I think we've talked around this table about lobbying to see that short-term rentals and B&Bs are going to a separate class, but I think we have to deal with what we can do while we work on the long-term things.
Anyone else before I make my amending motion? Councillor Steer?
Well, no, you pretty much echoed everything, and I talked to Councillor McMaster at length on this. I would support the amendment to the concerns that had come up, but it was implied that that business sector, that included all those levels in our conversation. So, but as the amendment would stand, I would support that. Sure.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move an amendment then that the clause between residential and business sectors be replaced with among all property classes, and that the clause from residential to business be replaced by between any classes, so that the motion would read that staff be directed to review the tax split among all property classes in order to determine whether a tax shift between any classes is appropriate. That council review the tax splits on a regular basis at least every council term. Okay, so moved and seconded for the amendment. Everybody's clear? Because I have it written here. Should have made copies, I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor? Thank you, none opposed. Motion carried. So back to the main motion, which again I'll read, that staff be directed to review the tax split among all property classes in order to determine whether a tax shift between any classes is appropriate, and that council review the tax splits on a regular basis at least every council term. Second. No, it's already, that's the main motion. I know, this is the classic thing we get to do. Okay, so are there any final comments on the motion? Yes?
I'll just say I'd like to thank Councillor McMaster for bringing it forward at this time. It does come up during the budgeting process and as we're setting the tax rates, and we sort of get a quick picture of it from staff of how the taxes balance out between classes, but we don't get any time to analyze it, and especially after an election here. It gets compressed a little bit, the whole budget process. So this is the right time to throw it into the mix, and so it can come forward at budget time.
Thank you. Okay, we'll vote on the motion then. All in favor? Thank you. And opposed? Motion carried. Okay, over to Councillor Baert.
Okay, thank you. So there's a motion that we're all aware of, and that is that staff be instructed to prepare for Council's consideration of first reading of bylaw amending zoning bylaw number 770, 1997, to prohibit any development of tourist commercial accommodation beyond the accommodation that has been developed or approved by development permit or building permit, as well as any amendment to official community plan bylaw 1200/2013 that is required to enable the council to adopt the zoning amendments. The amendment should address all types of commercial tourist accommodation, including the following: bed and breakfast, campground, guest house, hostel, hotel and motor hotel, lodge, resort condominium, short-term rental. And then there's a second motion. But I want to speak to the first one, if I may, because
So
just
our process really with the
to
notice
get
of
a
motion
second?
is that you would need a seconder
Yeah.
if council wishes to discuss it. Or frankly, if council wishes to support it. I mean,
well, or discuss it second.
somebody may move to this, but I just want to say when we move, and then if it's seconded for discussion purposes, is not really a valid reason to, well, we could still discuss things, but I mean, we've been counseled through meeting procedures that seconding simply to discuss isn't always in the best interest of council. It just means that the writer has to go back and amend or try again. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Baert, for reading your motion. And I would ask, is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, Councillor Steer seconds. All right, over to you.
Okay, so so I brought this, what I perceived as problem, to the CAO and mayor to talk about what I could do to go forward to kind of hit pause. We have the C5 zoning report that shows that there's a lot of unbuilt capacity, and one of the experiences we have in council is developments happen and it's kind of, oh, how did that happen? There's 70 more units in this place, or there's something over there, and there's no counterpoint about the sort of other side of the picture, which is all the stresses on the community that are happening as, you know, the tourism growth and the impacts of that and so forth. So the trigger for me was the development along the roadway at, I think it's called Hotel Z, but by the mud flats, where there's an expansion that falls within that kind of zoning permission about which we have nothing to say. And within that proposal, we're going to be 30 units of staff accommodation. But, you know, when I started to look at the calculation, it's kind of, okay, but where are the other 30 staff living? And, you know, being on the Tofino Housing Corporation and always being focused on seasonal worker housing, it kind of, you know, how do we kind of get people to the table seriously to have this conversation? And having heard what I did today, you know, I recognize that the resorts, which have land, often can build, and some do actually have the full contingent of their staff living on property. And it's, I'm not trying to, and never has it been my intention to say stop development, ever. My intention has been to say, in the C5 report, there are a number of tools that are mentioned. You know, the ratio of floor size. I just want to get to that particular area. There's about 4 or 5 tools that, you know, reduce height and coverage, create a new zone or zones, add floor area ratio, create a new density per acre. I mean, we have some direction pointed to us. We have a basis for some discussion, with the development community and the people who hold those rights. And as a result of our OCP and maybe some of the things that are coming on board about it. But we just are constantly just hearing about developments going ahead about which none of these kind of considerations apply. And so the intention I had was to say, hit pause. What came back as advice, legal, probably, you know, some legal and professional advice, is that it come back in the form of this motion. I had a meeting with the CIO following that to say, you know, I'm not entirely comfortable because, you know, if it goes forward like this, I mean, I'm thinking about it in a time frame. I'm thinking of at least through the OCP process, and when we look at the results of the OCP process and layer it over with some of these suggestions, you know, are we going to have a tourism zone? And if we are, what does that mean? Because we made that decision, you know, we're re-looking at decisions 2005 or, you know, 1997. And, you know, I recall in 93, we were still trying to make a case that we actually would have a viable tourism economy in this place. So decisions, we've been making decisions with the best knowledge we have. And I think it's brought us to this point of saying, well, we got to stop and take another look at this, because it's in all our interests, whether you're functioning, high functioning and, you know, fabulous resort, or you're a place along the highway that wants to develop it. With, you know, we're all in this around the impacts and creating balance. Balance around residency and housing, balance around, you know, traffic management, infrastructure, water, sewer. And indeed, as was said earlier in the delegation, you know, we want these businesses as partners in helping us pay for all the infrastructure, but some of that is because we're creating the infrastructure demand. And how much are we, you know, grappling with that? So, you know, I'm a bit perplexed about where to go forward with the motion, because it really isn't capturing essentially what I'm trying to do, which is to say, I want to hit pause, and if this is the best tool to do that and get to the table, have first reading, then start to work with staff feedback and support, then I would, you know, suggest that we proceed. But the other way is there another way that it doesn't create, like, I'm not trying to create undue stress in the development community or the resort operators, whether they're planning on developments or not, but I am trying to say we need to get to the table and talk about this.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Anderson?
Since it's on the floor now, there is something to be done here. I'm hearing it more and more, and it's that we're overwhelmed with tourism, basically, and there is capacity out there to expand that. Probably more capacity to expand commercial than we have capacity of undeveloped residential land right now. So I get it, but I'm not sure if I can't get my head around this motion right now, if this is the right way to do it. And I don't know how to arrive at that spot. What kind of discussion we need to have, we need to workshop it to get to a motion that might work. This motion, I heard more actually from people that either have or might have soon a vacation rental property as part of their idea of having residents. So they got a lot of worries from that sector, and, you know, of course they would upset the C5 zoning sector in a large way as well. So I agree that some discussion needs to happen to get some planning behind it and try and solve some of these impacts and issues, and to manage the growth of the tourism economy that we so much depend on. also so that the tourism economy itself isn't ruined by being overrun and by the success. So how to have that discussion, I don't know, but I don't know if we want to launch staff out working on it just at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McMaster?
Yeah, I see the intent and I appreciate the intent, but I can't support this motion as it is. I think affecting the value of people's property with a motion like this, I have really serious concerns about when people have entered into land dealings in good faith. I think there's other ways that will be used to, if we want to curtail development. I think an obvious one is water. If it's going to slow things down, we're going to be forced to take that into account. So, but this motion as it is at the moment is a blanket over all tourist accommodation. I can't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart?
Well, not that I have, I completely understand the intent, and I'm just going to echo everything that has been said. I don't think this, right now, this motion is, there. I think there is probably, and I don't have the answer, we do need to bring this to the table. I don't think this is the way to do it, and I'm echoing the concerns of Councillor McMaster and Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Councillor McQuaid?
Yeah, I appreciate the motion in terms of bringing forward something that we have discussed many times at this table, though the concerns, pressures, and challenges that are facing this community. But I do want to point to something perhaps that we're not illuminating. Everyone keeps gesturing towards what can we do and what can we ask staff to do. And I do want to remind everyone that we are engaging in a number of roundtables, that we have housing projects on the go, that this is not, I don't think, something that is not on the mind of every councillor that sits at this table every time that we come under, that we see any development taking place, that we see a discussion of water conservation. All of these things, I think this is perpetually on this council's mind. And while I understand the intent of the motion, I don't think this is a pause. I think this is a full stop.
Yeah, no.
And I can understand the concern, and I do echo the comments from the public that there is a solution here that we're moving towards that is creative and Tofino based and intuitive and perhaps not as blunt as this. And while I'm grateful always for the opportunity to discuss all of these concerns and pressures, I can't support it as it stands.
Thank you. Councillor Chalmers?
I'll echo the same, but I would be interested in maybe looking to see more information from staff. Like, I didn't really feel from any report that we don't really understand how much growth is out there. Is it even a concern? Like, maybe, you know, everybody's feeling this, but maybe it's not even as bad as we look. Like, actual solid information to even start a conversation would be a direction I'd like to see.
Okay. Councillor Baert?
Yeah, again, that's exactly right. I do feel it's far too blunt an instrument, and that's not really what I was trying to get at. And I did have the follow-up conversation with staff, and I should have trusted my instincts around that a lot better, in the sense of I wasn't going for bylaw, but rather, you know, is there something else in between that we can, you know, as I said, hit pause on this and look to what are the tools and what's coming up in the OCP plan. And I'm just being, you know, remembering, and I wasn't kind of in the room, so I don't even know if I can mention it, but oh yeah, it's in the public record that there was an application, the hosteling, you know, and that it was decided to wait until the OCP process. I mean, it's a bit of that kind of thinking, whatever was the rationale of council at that time. You know, because I have an accommodation up the street, I didn't sit in for that discussion, but just to say generally, you know, there is precedent around saying, we'll wait till this happens and take a look at it. And what I am trying to do is you know, see that our resort owners and business owners and property developers and our community members who are already doing this somewhat through the OCP, but are also kind of having a dialogue to safeguard their own interest too. You know, we are a community with resorts, not the other way around. And so I think that we have to kind of weigh the balance on the community side of it and support our resorts and the development of those. So I guess my preference is to not go forward with it, to not support the motion, but to maybe look to council to ask for another way to approach this. And I think the mayor probably has ideas about how that could happen.
Councillor McQuaid, did you have another comment? Okay, thanks. So I also want to echo the thought that I appreciate the intention behind the motion, and not a single person that I've spoken to disagrees with the fact we need to have a conversation about the rate of development and what our limits to growth are and what our vision is as Tofino in the future, 5, 10, 15, 50 years from now. We are in the middle of an OCP process, and I think that is probably our strongest tool right now to engage the community in dialogue about what we see ourselves as in 20 or 50 years. I did a little homework looking at other towns that have done, and I'll just call it a de facto development moratorium. I know that's not what you intended. And one of the things I noticed that all of these towns and this council's had in common as they considered it was they had a very detailed report from staff about impacts to existing zoning, land use applications that were underway, or development permit applications that were underway, or building permits that were underway, and kind of a sense of what was known to be coming in the immediate future, so that the councils of those towns could make, and in some cases did make, decisions specific to certain zones or to certain properties because they were aware that investments had been made and that plans were coming forward. And that is something that I could see happening. We could be requesting in 6 months or 8 months or a year from now, but I really want to encourage us to use the OCP as that venue for the dialogue. And I think that conversation around limits to growth is something that will, we need to very, very seriously undertake. And you certainly have caught everyone's attention, and I thank you for that. But I agree with you that we should defeat this motion, and I think that we should continue to work with our staff and really turn our minds to where we're at with the OCP. I'd ask if Bob or Aaron has any comments you want to make about this in general, about what we've discussed about the OCP.
As has been said multiple times, very much get the concern. Aaron and I talked earlier this week or late last week about timing of the OCP, and we're trying to get some time for Aaron to actually sit down and do some writing in the next couple of weeks. But the idea is that a few of the first chapters will be developed, and then an opportunity for council and the community to comment on them. One of the first 3 chapters will be growth management, or we may more accurately call it limits to growth. That has been very much a theme with the consultation that we've done with the community in the first year or so of working on a very much new community plan for Tofino. So it's a discussion that's coming probably sooner rather than later, and an opportunity for all aspects of the community to weigh in on questions, not directly like this, but what does the future of the community look like? How do we balance the residential needs with the commercial, with the commercial engine that keeps this place running? So some interesting writing for Aaron to do, and some interesting discussions coming up. And Aaron, feel free to jump in there.
All right. Then I'll call a question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed to the motion? The motion is defeated. Thank you. Okay. That brings us to the end of our meeting, and it is the opportunity for the public to make comment or ask questions. And you can, if you wish to. But you certainly don't have to. But Mr. Bailey almost always has questions.
No, I have nothing.
Wow.
It's past my bedtime.
Okay.
That's the way meeting.
So, wow. All right, then, okay, I'll ask a member of council to move us into the closed section, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91 A, B, and C of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent, to discuss personal information of individuals being considered for
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. 2-minute recess? Sure. I am really